So there's a lot of dramatization, and this is again, it's how the left wins. They control the language, they control the communication, and they get to pretend as if things are not what they are and ignore everything that's like it that either they excused or justify. That's how they win. Now, this whole claim of insurrection, coup, this whole, okay, these guys were protesting they were trying to instill a new dictator, or the same dictator and what they claim Donald Trump is. Now, the interesting thing about that is that, okay, let's get this straight. Let's say 99% of them were unarmed. I keep seeing this, though I haven't really seen much of the receipts. I think it's a bunch of Fed boy stuff. But even if we assume that there were 2 pipe bombs, which has got Fed boy written all over it, right? Nonetheless, 99% of them were unarmed. And that's kind of how you got to be in D.C. anyway. So they went to the Capitol. Slight conflict with the police. In some instances, they let them by. Some instances, they didn't. There was some conflict there. And then they got in there, and then they, threw some papers around and stuff like that. And then they got out. Like, they were just walking out like nothing happened. Right? And the police were standing there. They were walking. If you actually look at the videos, you see there's one instance that was funny where they were, like, walking in through the Capitol. And, like, there's these, like, what do you call it? Like, those little guardrail kind of joints, right? That they wasn't even walking around that. They were just like walking through it like casually. So, okay, unarmed, casual, kicking their feet up, Nancy Pelosi's desk, that type of stuff did happen, right? All of that happened. If that's what you call a coup or insurrection or something like that, I just don't understand why you think that if that's actually what they were attempting to do, why would they not be strapped to the absolute gills? These are Trump supporters. I'm willing to bet a lot of them are personal gun owners. Now, a lot of them flew from out of town, so they couldn't fly with that, but they could have easily drove there. If that was actually something that they wanted to do, they could have coordinated that. And believe it or not, it's enough that they would have shook something up in the event that they were actually strapped. But they weren't. So you mean to tell me that a bunch of dude bros going to the Capitol, again, there was conflict, but they shake some shit up and virtually all of them are unarmed. That's them trying to take over the government to install a dictator? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, why this is important, that this language for them has to be controlled. Because I talked about it on the channel and on two shows ago. I can't remember, episode maybe 64 of For Can and Say. And I discussed how, look, just 2 years ago and some change, the Women's March went to take over the Capitol. And the funny thing is they went and they were bragging about it. They said this was our last stand. You can go look at all the articles. Go look at even on the Women's March and the post that they had. They were saying that was literally the term. You want to talk about storming the Capitol. That was literally what they said that they were going to do, was storm the Capitol. And they did. Now, there wasn't much conflict. The police or the local police officers was like, well, all right, whatever. Y'all go do whatever it is y'all do. And they went and they were sitting there screaming at the in the Hart building, Hart building side of the complex. Like, that happened. So it was pre-planned. They said they were going to do it. Most of them, much like it, were unarmed, and virtually there wasn't any conflict, mainly because they said, hey, go on. There was virtually no conflict. So the difference is that they went, and it wasn't much. Yeah, they were screaming at the top of their lungs, but they wasn't like kicking their feet up on Nancy Pelosi's death. And there wasn't much conflict with the police because the police just, for the most part, let them go. Where there was conflict, they there was some tension. You saw some instances where you had some of those guys that were there at the Capitol the recent one, and they had conflict with the police. There were other instances where they were just like, the police was just like, all right, man, whatever, y'all gonna do whatever it is y'all gonna do. So I guess you can sit here and theorize, if that was how they treated it the whole time, would there have been any conflict? Would there have been any violence? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not here to make that claim. Nonetheless, to act like one is an insurrection and one isn't, because this was all part of a process. The only difference is that one was more so with the election, the presidential election, and the other was with Kavanaugh. That was it. So you had someone, which, I guess election, they do say elections have consequences, and, Trump got to, he wanted Kavanaugh in. He was able to get Kavanaugh in, but we had to go through this whole situation, this whole debacle with the whole sexual assault and all of that, and they were protesting that, right? So it was a process. It was a governmental thing that they were actually protesting. It just wasn't the presidential election. So that's what I'm like, okay, so one isn't like, we don't conflate that with people trying to basically use, or domestic terrorism, trying to use this idea of storming the Capitol to change the results of something. They can do that. The other guys can't. Well, or rather, one can do it and it not be labeled as such. Even though they can pre-plan it, they can say they're going to storm the Capitol. They do exactly that. That's perfectly fine. They bragged about it too. They bragged about it and said that was what they were going to do. And they did it, to their credit. Guys, this is controlling of language, man. But also it's dramatization. Because it makes no sense for a bunch of unarmed, like, to treat, like, look, man, you see more violence down, or, around the corner of your inner city, right? Than that. But dramatization, inciting violence, this is a threat to this and that, which in some cases when they do say that I don't think it means what they think it means. But ain't that something, how they can dramatize these events, which then allows them to act like they have a basis to do some of the things that they do in the future. And that's how the leftists win. No, it doesn't even matter if they're doing what it is that they claim you're doing. All they need to do is have the educational, economic, and political elites to just get out there and label you as something else, as bad. Label you bad, label you as the word. It doesn't matter if they're hypocrites. That doesn't even matter. But they get the label. They have the corporate press on their side. They get to label you in any way, shape, or form, hypocrite or not. But they label you as whatever, and then it justifies to them everything it is that they're going to do in response. These guys are evil. They're not stupid, though.